All right, everyone. This is Josh and Scott here from bringing it to you from OPEX Fitness here. Today, the theme is talking about ruck marching. So Scott and I were just discussing. I just hit a ruck march that is a really good data point for kind of what we're looking for right here. So 8 miles, 11:46 pace at 153 beats per minute was the main stats there. All under ideal conditions: sleep, flat, paved. 40 pounds dry, so nothing crazy there. Now, the biggest indicator, biggest physical indicator that determines you can make it at SFAS is ruck marching. So there's a couple different stats I've pulled. I've seen some on the internet. You're 6.5 times more likely to make it if you're in the top 25th or 25% of your top quartile of your SFAS class. I've also seen some other data points showing correlations between your 2 ruck times and your land navigation ability to find points during land nav, which you have a ruck on your back during that time. So those are the biggest indicators for success at SFAS. So through this chat we're going to have, I think we'll talk through how we're approaching ruck training a little bit more specifically, how, especially since it's such a critical component of SFAS, and how we're balancing needs for the ACFT, the Special Forces Readiness Evaluation, or SFRE, coming up in January, muscle mass, and then finish it up with some chats about nutrition, I think. So, Scott, I'd love to hear your coach's perspective on the ruck march portion of it.
So the stats, we'll talk about Special Forces assessment and selection has been around for a long time, so they have the data.
Right.
You know what I mean? So this is, I would say, 100%, if you can, for lack of a better word, put your head down and just grind out with 55 to, 80 pounds on your back, you're going to be in a good place, right? Not only physically, but that mental aspect of just it's a grind.
Right.
It's a grind. So, so that being said, we have to eventually, and we are, within the next couple of weeks, we were speaking earlier, ramping up that ruck volume. So when we're looking at the program, SFRE in January, I may know more than you, but I don't see you having an issue getting through SFRE. I mean, you may not be top of the stick or chalk or whatever they call it, but you're not going to fail SFRE.
Right.
It's what can we do prior to January, because who says that you don't get SFRE and literally 30 days later you're going SFAS, right? So we have to be prepared. So that being said, with the 25th percentile, the top 25, 6.5 times, that's huge. I mean, it's enormous, right? So a couple data points that we wanted to get. We wanted to get the half marathon. That's going to dial in that 5-mile run that we're going to need for SFRE. We're going to get some fantastic paces there. So for those of you that don't know, that half marathon is November 11th.
Correct.
Right? So after November 11th, running volume for the longer running volume is going to go down, and we're going to concentrate on that 5-mile time, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be it. It's going to be intervals. It's going to be fartleks. It's going to be tempo runs, right? 5-mile time trials, stuff like that, right? So that's what we got to look at. But that rucking volume has to go up. Right now, we're staying at 40 pounds dry, anywhere between 65 to 90 minutes.
Right.
So we're bumping that up significantly. We're going to peak the week of the last week of October. So we're going to peak that week with your longest zone 2 run, some tempo runs at race pace, and we're going to peak some rucking as well. And then we're going to pull back, crush that half, and then go from there. So we're looking at 100-minute, 120-minute rucks, and we're actually going to ramp up a little bit of weight too.
Sounds good.
So we got to get that weight up too. It doesn't make it easier. You just sort of just embrace the suck.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I think to your point too, it's not just being able to ruck 12 miles on a paved road fast with a 35-pound ruck on your back. You've got to be able to do that, but also be able to hit those 55, 60, even 80 pound plus rucks, just being able to keep moving, really. A lot of those ones generally aren't for time, or, I mean, there's only, every 10 pounds, Mountain Tactical Institute has done a bunch of really good research, like every 10 to 15 pounds you add on your back, like there's a certain amount of minutes you take off. We'll try and get that exact stat for you at some point too. Just physiologically, that just is what happens. But that just means you've got to be able to keep the pace with, you got to be faster than the guy next to you, basically.
That's it.
And that's what we're kind of working towards with the different paces, the different types of rucks. I think right now we're kind of splitting in between a harder paced ruck and then an easier, slower, more conversational ruck. So today was the harder one. I think I've kind of found a better balance of keeping the easy ruck easy and the harder one harder. This has been a really good week for that. So I think what I'll also try and do is introduce more of the uneven terrain on my easy rucks in particular down in Harbison Forest, where I don't have to worry about time or anything like that. Just go and get after it. So I think that's going to be, my head's in a good spot mentally rucking right now. So
and I would say that going into the land nav, especially night land nav, you got to get some reps in the woods.
Right.
You got to. Not necessarily, in training. I mean, you have that fundamental skill as an officer, to find points. God help us if you don't.
Right.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. But you have that skill. But let's throw on, like you said, 65 pounds on your back. Let's try to find 5 points at night. With all that, let's go ahead and add some sleep deprivation.
Right. Absolutely.
Because you're not going to be rested for that thing at all. So all that comes into play. So, when we're those easier, and nothing's easy about a ruck march, but those easier efforts are going to build that dexterity. When we're just 1 foot in front of the other, that's one thing. But when you've got to step over logs, when you have to juke and jive left and right, that also makes a huge implication in fitness. So adductors and abduction really doesn't come into play when you're 1 foot in front of the other. Right. Huge difference. Climbing over obstacles. Whether you're sighting or whatever you've got to do to find those points. That's all going to come into play. So getting in the woods is going to be an integral part.
Absolutely,
for sure.
Absolutely. And just so folks have some more context too, so I'm going back to some of the old stomping grounds for my college. We have a really good terrain-based land nav course there that I'll be hopefully doing some footage on about some of the tactics I use to be good at land nav. And then there's also, honestly, you can go down to Fort Bragg or Fort Liberty now and go on the same general area where SFAS is. I'm planning on doing that as well, just to get, you can try and do a map recon if you can, do an in-person recon, even better, and then even down some courses here at Fort Jackson, all kind of time permitting, time dependent. But
for sure.
It's definitely going to be, you don't want to go in, land nav is a perishable skill, and you don't want to go in unprepared for something like that. So shifting gears, talking about, keeping muscle mass and, also kind of being in shape as, a soldier, I would say, like as an officer for the ACFT, stuff like that. Love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so if we're talking about maintaining muscle mass, it's going to be huge going into the SFRE and especially SFAS. You're going to lose muscle mass. You're going to lose weight. I mean, granted, it's not going to be, like a Ranger school where you go in at 130 and you come out at 95. That's a little overemphasized, but you see what I'm saying. But holding on to that muscle mass and maintaining as much strength and power before we get there is going to pay huge dividends once you're actually at the result. Now, granted, we don't want to be 295 pounds jacked, right? Because you got 295 pounds plus whatever you got to carry on your back. That's a lot, right? But we want to have a significant amount of muscle mass. So if we could be, based on your weight, if we could have 75 to 90 pounds of solid lean muscle mass going into, man, we're going to be in a good place, right? So how do we balance maintaining muscle mass with hours and hours of aerobic work, right? Because, you know, many trainers will tell you different things, but it's really hard to build muscle when you're doing that much aerobic stuff. It's just really hard, right? So that's where I think the key components here are, we've really got to concentrate on recovery. Recovery, not only in, and I love the fact that you got great sleep last night, not only in getting great sleep, drinking plenty of H2O, you know, hydrating otherwise, getting your electrolytes, but we have to look at nutrition. We have to look at the whole thing, right? So are you getting 1.5 to 1.8 grams per lean muscle mass of protein every day? You know, if we got 70 pounds of lean muscle, are you getting a minimum of 185 pounds of protein? That's something to look at, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's huge. And you know, you're not a vegetarian, but you know, let's say somebody, you know, later on down the road, because I know this is for other soldiers and sailor and officers as well. What if somebody down the other, you know, near the road is a vegetarian, right? Whether it's a religious aspect or just a personal feeling, how do they get ample amounts of protein to recover going through all of this stuff? So I think the 1.5 to 1.8 grams of lean protein per lean muscle mass is huge, and I think it's often underlooked, mainly because, man, Josh, it's a lot of food.
I was going to say, that's a lot of protein to be able to take in.
It's a lot of food,
you know?
Absolutely.
I've never really tracked my nutrition very well. It's not a data point I've been super huge on, but if we're being serious about this, which I am, we've got to be, you know, thinking about that. And to your point, you know, that's where sometimes the protein shakes can come in, or to your point, if you're eating that much, you know, chicken breast, chicken thigh, steak, that's a lot of food to be eating. So yeah, that's something that I haven't really considered as much as I should have. So yeah, good.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we need to dive into a little more in depth. You know, with kid gloves, right? So if, let's say, for instance, you're hitting 110 grams of protein right now, and I say, okay, cool, I want you to hit 200, and you are not going to feel good. You are not going to feel good. Yeah, you know, because we look at the effects of a high protein diet. Is, you know, you're going to be you up your protein, gotta up your water. You have to, because it takes so much water, so much energy to digest that protein. And then we got to look at nutrient timing, right? So, do you want to eat, you know, 170 grams of chicken breast and then go for a 4-hour ruck?
Absolutely not.
Right. Right. So we have to look at nutrient timing, knowing, and we know, and we always have to keep her on the prize, right? So we know that during SFRE, whether it's, I don't know exactly, because it varies where you go, whether it's going to be overnight, one night, or whether it's a 3-day event, right? We just don't know. You may, I don't know at this point. So I've seen all kinds of research on some of the guys, it's like just one long day, right? Some it's an overnight, you know, but anyway. So knowing you're not going to get that nutrition when you're actually there. So what can we do to make you, and I say it and I'll say it every time we call it, robust and resilient going into that event. So, yeah. I
love that. And, you know, I think there's a ton more that we will discuss in the future there, you know, but I think kind of dialing in some of those, I love the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. You know, we've got to hit the most important pieces should be the focus, you know. So ruck marching, sustaining the body during those ruck marches, sustaining muscle mass going into some of these events will kind of be a key focus as we move forward through the rest of the year.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
We're on a good track.
All right. I love it, everybody. Thanks for talking to me, Scott. And you know, we'll meet up again next week.
Do it next week.